Hey guys, if you like builds and guides on hack and slash, especially Diablo 4, make sure to subscribe to the channel and big thanks for that. In this video, I'll give you my setup of my Ice Spikes build in order to easily farm in Nightmare level 100 and easily kill Lilith. Additionally, you'll see that you have the perfect setup in order to farm the new upcoming event for the Abattoir of Zir. Before we begin, just a few tips on why it should be very good for the Abattoir of Zir. Even if, of course, we don't have all the information yet, but you'll be very tanky, almost unkillable, and you have plenty of damage, whether it's on bosses or in area of effect. So in the end, you'll be ready to face anything. You have a few things that you need to understand, so of course, I'll go in the details so that you can do this build for your character. So let's talk, of course, about the build and start with the skills. You want Flame Shield, Teleport, Deep Freeze, Ice Armor, Frostbolt and Blizzard. The thing is that with Flame Shield, Teleport and also Deep Freeze, it will grant you Unstoppable. It's important to keep this stat in mind because we'll be playing around Unstoppable. There's also a hidden skill, this one on your dash that we use with the Vampiric Power and will also grant you Unstoppable, so it's important to very understand that we need to have these stats on our character. For the enchantments, you'll want to have the burning effect, so damage reduction from enemies and increased damage to burning enemies, and the frozen orb in order to have additional proc of Ice Spike. Last thing on the skill, make sure to not boost Blizzard because we don't use the damage from Blizzard, we'll just build around Ice Spike in order to do the massive damage that we have. So we have plenty of ways to be unstoppable and it's very important that you understand how it works. So on the gear setup, I'll start with that, and you want to have the T-Bots wield. Because first, of course, you have some good stats, increased damage, damage while unstoppable, and so on. So it's great, but it's not why we play this punt. When you're unstoppable, you'll gain 50 of your primary resource. That means that every time that you cast a dodge, flame shield, or teleport, or even the ultimate, you'll gain 50 mana. That's our first K of the build. We want to generate as much as possible mana. Because the more mana that we have, the more Blizzard that we'll spend, and the more Ice Spikes that you'll have, and will result in the ton of damage that we have. We'll also combine this with attack speed and mana reduction, but I'll get back to this a bit later in the video. So we have T-Bot and we have another good synergy with it with the Flicker Step. The Flicker Step will be very useful because we'll get about 10 seconds every time that we dash, and since we have a good range of dash with this new power, it will reduce the cooldown of Deep Freeze by 10 seconds. So basically you'll always be able to use your ultimate and will be very convenient during Nightmare dungeons. So the plan is also to have this dash reducing your ultimate cooldown, and since you have on these boots attack reducing your evade cooldown by 1.2 seconds, every time that Blizzard will do damage, you'll get this cooldown reduction on your dodge, meaning that most of the time you'll have your evade ready. So you have almost no cooldown on your evade, meaning that it will grant you mana with T-Bolt and reduce the cooldown of Deep Freeze when you dash through enemies. So this first combo is a bit tricky, but it's very important to understand how it works. And if you have any question on it, feel free once again to post in the comments. I'll be happy to give you some information on it. So now for the rest of the stuff, if you don't have Shaco, simply put the aspect with additional armor when you do damage. We won't be using the +4 to all skills, it's not very important, but on Shaco we have some resource generation which is quite broken with the build. So it's important to have this affix, it's not the only one, and the second one to get is the lucky hit. We'll be using Soul Brown because you have some damage reduction on your barrier and also some lucky hit chance, which is very important on the build. You have a third affix, this one, which grants you a chance to restore primary resource. So it's also cool to have this affix. You can get here on the gloves but also on your focus, and you'll get the chance to restore your primary resource. Of course, try to get some lucky hit here, and if you can, some mana cost reduction will be also very good. For the gloves, you can also get intelligence and critical strike chance if you have. For the aspects, you'll want the Asus Ferocity. We don't care too much about the K passive itself, but this combo will allow you to grant you 50% attack speed and of course more attack speed, more blizzard, more damage and so on. So then for the pants you have the T-Bolt and for the boots Flicker Step, and for your weapon the fact that Deep Freeze will create Ice Spikes. Even if the Ice Spike radius explosion is also increased and it's interesting to have this aspect, it's important to have also the damage during your ultimate. You'll see that when you jump into a pact in Nightmare Dungeon T100 you do plenty of damage and it will help you to clear faster these areas. For the stats you want intelligence, critical strike damage and damage to slot enemies or freeze enemies. For the aspect on the focus you want increased damage to vulnerable enemies when you have a barrier, and for the amulet the fact that when you cast Blizzard it will spawn Ice Spikes. Try to have the best value on the amulet in order to boost your DPS. On it you want mana cost reduction, armor, if possible some intelligence, and why not a good passive to boost. Then we have our two unique rings, first one in order to create Ice Spike on a lucky hit. It also good because we have some lucky hit chance and mana cost reduction, Ice Spike damage, critical strike damage, so this ring is just perfect, and this one Talrasha because simply it's just way too broken, so make sure to use it. We also have some resource and lucky hit chance on it. For the gems it's easy, life, damage to vulnerable enemy and resistances. Even if I'm not at 70%, it's okay to get close to this value. For the Vampiric Power we'll be using Infection because it will boost our damage and count as another source for Talrasha, meaning that we'll have 4 sources. First one poison, fire damage, lightning damage and cold damage, meaning a boost of 60% of your damage, so it's important to get this one. Then you have damage to vulnerable, apply curse to enemies, and the fact that evade will transform you into some bats. Lastly, you'll get some increased attack speed based on your movement speed, and as I mentioned a bit earlier, more attack speed, more blizzard, more ice spike and more damage. So now let's talk about the skill tree. You want 1 point in order to get the enchantment, 1 point for the frostbolt, and just 1 point with this one in order to generate mana. 3 points just here to get some defensive, and we'll get this one to get some damage reduction after teleporting. If you don't have Shaco, you need to put 1 point here and 1 point here in order to unlock them. Simply remove some points just here and then you'll have the skills. You want the glass cannon, 1 point to reset your skills, the lucky hit, and the fact that you'll have some damage reduction with a barrier just here. A bit below, 1 point in Blizzard, and the fact that it will increase the duration, the ice passive here, and increase critical strike damage to burning enemies. You also have all the ice passives which are quite good just here, Deep Freeze, and with the fact that Deep Freeze will reset your cooldown. The combo is that to use Flame Shield and Teleport, and after that you use the Deep Freeze in order to have your cooldown ready again. You can also of course use it with the Ice Armor additionally. So back on the skill tree you also have some healing here, which is good to have, and lastly Asus Ferocity. We don't care about the K passive itself, it's just to have our increased attack speed, which is right here. For the Paragon, first glyph increasing ice spike damage, then we have here increasing damage to vulnerable enemies with first skill, this one increasing damage to burning enemies, increasing damage to vulnerable enemies. We also play this glyph in order to have the bonus damage to 10%, and this node also increasing damage to vulnerable enemies. On the right you have this node that we won't be using, and this glyph which will increase damage to crowd control enemies. Lastly, at the bottom, our last glyph, which is here, increase critical strike damage, and we won't be using this node. To finish this video, you'll have several gameplays: Nightmare Dungeons T100, Lilith, bosses from Nightmare Dungeons T100, and also some power leveling to my mates in a Nightmare Dungeon level T99. Don't forget the combo to clean Elites, Flame Shield, Teleport and your ultimate, and after that Flame Shield again and Blizzard. For bosses it's easier, simply spam your Blizzard and don't forget in any case to use your dodge in order to gain mana. Thanks for watching this video, and as usual, if you have any question, feel free to post in the comments. I'll be happy to answer you and to help you if something is still not quite clear.